Welcome to the Pointy End. I'm Sutherland. Today my guest is Colin Burns, an avid council watcher, sometimes council critic. Colin, welcome.
Thanks, Keith.
Now, last night was probably fairly predictable to you with the recommendation 8 City Futures directed not being separated from it. What's your opinion on that?
Oh, I think it's a badly missed opportunity. There's enormous scope for improvement in the performance of City Futures, and the independent review kind of highlighted that there were more efficiencies could become by separating that out into another unit. Now, I didn't actually recommend that in my submission, but certainly recommended splitting up City Futures to make it more efficient by transferring some of the functions into other functions within the council and making a lot of the costs more reflective of the actual costs that it costs to run that unit.
The thing about it was that you've probably got an uphill battle to argue that, because at the moment there was 129 public submissions, 121 in support of retaining it. So by and large, and I haven't gone into detail as to where those 121 supporting it came from. There was also the petition, 721 people, 371 were from the Greater Bendigo encouraging it. So you had a battle, those people who were arguing. The only ones that were passionate about it last night, against it of course, were Councillor Chapman and Councillor Leach, and they argued for the same reasons as you, the economies of scale. It could be done differently, and I have to say that Dennis on this program sort of did an interview with George Flack, and George said that after 5 years he could turn that around and make a profit. Is that your opinion, if you split it off, that you would see a profit at the end of the day, or you're just more in the point of trying to save costs in this?
Basically save costs. Making a profit isn't necessarily essential, but certainly reducing the costs, like it's about $10.5 million a year at the moment for City Futures, and those costs certainly need to come back. That's like that's about a 20%, or sorry, not 20%, that's like a 5% rate increase each of 5 years. So over the period of 10 years, we could cut out 5% in the first 5 and 5% in the next 5. So that's the way I'd see it.
A lot of the arguments last night with the councillors that were speaking in favour of retaining the status quo were that basically, how do you put a price on arts? And it comes back to arts. Everyone forgets about economic development, and I find that's really quite irritating. The arts side of things has got an increase in staff, the capital has, the art gallery, etc., but economic development hasn't changed in 10 years, so it's a poor relation. That's been my argument. But at the end of the day, what they were saying last night, they were bringing in, Winston Churchill said, well, if you have to put a price on the arts. Rod Fife said last night, if you have to put a price on going to the art gallery, then it becomes elitist. But then the same argument could be said about sport, I would have thought.
Well, I think it's already elitist. I think 85% of the people who go to the art gallery and use that are not from Bendigo, they're from out of town. So already there's that. It's not really for the residents themselves, although they claim it is, but it's really for what I would say the elitists.
So their expectation is, sorry Col, their expectation is they will pay a fee. They pay to go to all the art galleries in Melbourne and beyond Bendigo. They expect to pay, they come to Bendigo, it's for nothing. So you're saying that it should be charged?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. The other thing is that tourism, and you can bracket tourism and the art gallery and all those all into one, makes up about only 3% of the total gross regional product of Bendigo. Gross regional product's about $10 billion a year. Tourism, the arts and all that is worth about 300 odd million. So there's a lot of money spent in that area and all of the other areas are kind of neglected in that respect, comparatively speaking.
The council come up with these wonderful pie charts to show the numbers of tourists that are coming in town, the spin-off effect, 2.25 times multiplier that comes to our community because of the arts, because of tourism, because of all of the functions, the Grace Kelly exhibitions and so on. But they're saying that the multiplier effect is a lot higher than what you're indicating.
Well, if you look at the art gallery, the subsidy to the art gallery has doubled in the last 7 or 8 years. It's gone from $1 million to over $2 million a year. Now, I don't know where the multiplier effect is, but I'm the one feeling it in my hip pocket, and a lot of other residents are feeling in their hip pocket too. And I think, you can argue till the cows come home about whether the money in the arts is the most effective way of using our dollars. I would argue that it's not, and there needs to be a greater spread of that to some of the other businesses and organisations, the other industry sectors in Bendigo, and that's not happening at the moment.
Okay, and the question you asked last night about the NED, the payment there of how much, and I listened to the response from the CEO, Craig Neiman, listened to the response from City Futures Director, Stanley Akos, that said, we can't give you those figures, it'll be 3 months down the track because there's this, this and this. I am assuming from that you didn't get a satisfactory answer.
I certainly did not, Keith. There's a method in the questions that I'm asking. I sent a whole lot of questions off to Peter Davies yesterday, lunchtime thereabouts, and he came back and said, oh, we can't answer all those questions, have you got one question? So I changed it to one question, which was basically, was $400,000 spent in producing NED? The answer to that question was, it was lights, it was outfits, it was all these nice little things that we spend our money on, and it occurred over 2 or 3 years. Now, that's not a very satisfactory question because I really wanted specific answers to that question, and it's all, as usual, kind of not, you don't ever get a direct answer out of Stan.
But I noticed that the Mayor said, there was somebody else, I think it was Robert Smallpage, said the same sorts of thing. Are we talking about this stuff? There was Paul McCartney also asked for the information, and I think the Mayor said, oh, for 3 months' time, if you haven't got an answer or a satisfactory response, contact me. So everyone's been put on the never to try and find out about that one.
Yeah. And that's what happens, and yeah, you don't get often a straight answer. I remember when the budget was being discussed, I know it's not a lot to do with what we want to talk about, but the budget was being discussed, or the release of the draft budget was being discussed last council meeting or the one before, and I asked the question then about amounts of $3 million for the leisure centre that were in the budget, and I was told that it would be discussed later on when the budget was going to be discussed at that meeting. Nothing came up about that. But amazingly, the next day in the paper, all the answers to the questions that I was asking at the meeting were in the Addy. So, you know, it just seems that someone else has got a lot more information, the reporters or whatever, got a lot more information than what the public can only get access to.
Okay, well, you mentioned the leisure centre. I'd like to talk to you about that. What's your opinion on the latest council recommendation was that we have a 25-metre pool and obviously still getting rid of the leisure centre instead of the 50-metre pool. We had Don McKinnon on the program last week talking about retaining the leisure centre. He came up with these fabulous designs to say just with a small shift facing north, you get all the afternoon sun, etc. Why aren't we looking at that? And now we're going to have a 25-metre pool. So your opinions on that one?
Well, I don't think the 25-metre pool's a goer with all the bells and whistles. I keep calling it the Taj Mahal. Either way, 50 or 25 with the Taj Mahal is unaffordable.
So you're saying the Taj Mahal, the hydrotherapy pool, all the other bells and whistles that go with it, because Ballarat built a 50-metre pool for $17 million. Well, Bendigo, we're talking 30. They're saying 28, 30. It'll be 30 plus by the time, if it's ever built.
Yeah, and actually, I think the Ballarat one was 14.
Was it?
I think so, yeah. They came in under budget. They allowed 16, I think, and they came in at 14. But it's a proper indoor aquatic centre that they built there. So there are better ways of going about it, and I don't think those options have been looked at seriously by City Futures or by the council. So one of the interesting things about the estimates for the cost of the pool, it excludes replacing the pool in maybe 50 years' time. There's no allowance made for that. That would be, if you build a 30 million pool, probably in 40 or 50 years' time, you'd need 50 million to replace it. Maybe 100 million, I don't know how much inflation is going to be, but it could be a lot of money that you've got to put aside over the period to replace that pool. Then there's the interest and principal repayments on a $20 million loan. They're talking 15 million. The way the system works, obviously, is you borrow 15, interest is added on, that becomes the gross amount of the loan. You've got to pay that whole amount back, and that's about $1.3 million a year just to do that. So between principal and interest payments, provision for depreciation, and also to replace it, you're probably looking at something like close to $4 or $5 million a year. Now that hasn't been factored at all into the equation in the part of the business case that's been released.
But their argument is that they'll be able to get some costs back from leasing a gym, leasing the hydrotherapy, doing all these sorts of things. But my argument with Peter Cox the other day was that we've already got 4 hydrotherapy pools in Bendigo. Why do we need another one? Why do you want to compete with private enterprise? That was their argument with childcare, and that you're wanting to be in this space now. So you are competing with private enterprise, but they're thinking they're going to get a return. But what you're saying is it won't. And that $15 million from the state budget is only for that project. You can't vary it.
Well, what I'm suggesting is they go back to the government and renegotiate all of that and just build the indoor pool for about about 14 million, and then spend a couple of million on the leisure centre, refurb that, and make that part of the for allied health and all that sort of stuff. So you can include a couple of rooms inside there that could be used for allied health and that kind of thing. That would also come with the new facade outside, all that kind of thing, the plumbing, fixing all up, those sorts of things. But I reckon about $2 million might pull that up. And then you have the best of both worlds. You have something that the community can have. It's like a community hub, which we're trying to do as part of our residential strategy. Everything's supposed to be within 10 minutes.
10 minutes, yeah.
It fits in with Gateway Park, Gower Park. It kind of completes that whole kind of community hub kind of area. And to be bulldozing something like that, and then in maybe 2 or 3 years' time, there's no community hall down there, someone's going to be saying, oh, can we have a community hall? And here's 20 million bucks we've got to put up for that. Absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
Couldn't agree more. Now, finally, the other one that's probably the big ticket item in Bendigo was the airport. $5 million came out of the federal budget for the airport. Do you think that that's good value for money with the airport? Because that's been one of their priorities. Airport, leisure centre, the 2 major priorities of this council, and Dennis and I spoke at head-to-head this morning. Council, we think that there should be 5 priorities, and said to Dennis, well, you should be coming up with 5 and I'll come up with 5, and I dare say you come up with 10. But what's your opinion on that? Was that value for money or not?
I don't believe so. We were looking down the passageway of a $14 million loan before the $5 million came from the federal government, because there are 3 stages to that airport redevelopment. And the actual cost of the total development is something like $19.3 million over the 3 phases of the project, not 15. So we've still got to come up with another 4 on top of the 5 we're already putting in. That's $9 million we're putting in. Now,
but doesn't that enhance Bendigo's reputation as a commercial hub? We need the airport. There's always the argument that we're so close to Melbourne. Do we need one so close to from Melbourne to Bendigo? So that's an argument, of course.
Well, that could be an argument, but I in my residential strategy, economic development strategy submission, I suggested that they go and buy maybe 2,000 or 3,000 acres out the other side of Morong, Bridgewater, and do a decent job of it, and put in a really good regional airport, and maybe looking with that business park they're doing at Morong and putting in a meatworks, and we can export stuff overseas to Asia directly from Bendigo, because that's located on, the 3 major highways, the Calder Highway, I can't think of the other 2 off the top of my head.
See, that was mooted several years ago with the late Neil Clark.
Yeah.
He suggested they have an airport sort of Gornong, Huntley, taken Echuca, Shepparton, and of course that becomes produce like out of Avalon. They're taking produce from that part of the world. We could be taking out this part of the world. So that's been mooted, but council in its wisdom chose not to, because Neil's comments, exactly what your comments are, that once you create the airport, that brings industry, that brings business there, and is an allied manufacturing industry that gets close to the airport, and that's what happens in America and all over the world.
Yep. They've done one in Toowoomba, some farmers a farmer up there, and with some private sector money, they built an airport there for about 300 million. And that's something I think could be done here if someone was entrepreneurial enough to do it. So look, I don't think that the money on the airport is well spent. At the panel hearing a few weeks ago, and in last month's council meeting, there's a line in there that says we're going to get out of all of this, there's not going to be much noise because we're only going to have 2 extra flights a day coming in and out of the airport. Now, you know, they're shooting themselves in the foot. They're trying to say it's going to be huge for economic development and all that sort of stuff. Even the runway itself is a limiting factor. You know, it's only 1,600 metres long. It can only do like a Q8 aircraft, Q8 aircraft.
What size is that?
It'll carry about 70 passengers maximum, okay. And it's capable of carrying maybe about a container load of goods, not without the passengers. So it's a freight thing. It'll only carry 1 container, so you're taking 1 container off the road. I mean, it's all very convenient for some of the industry around here to fill a container and put on an aircraft. That would be probably not a bad idea. But there again, it's the money that we're putting into that for the actual return, and at the minute we're getting like $125,000 a year out of the airport. Now we're going to put another $19 million in there. How much more are we going to get out of the airport? And that's a real problem. We don't seem to be focusing on that. We seem to be focusing on, oh, we do this for the community. But I can't see the economic development that they're claiming will come out of that will actually eventuate. I cannot see how that will eventuate.
Well, Cole, thank you so much for appearing on the program today. It's great to listen to your other side of the ledger, because you obviously do a lot of homework. As I said, you're an avid council watcher, sometimes stirrer there, and that's a good thing because we all need to be kept on our toes with some of these issues. So appreciate you coming on the program today.
Thanks very much, Keith. I've enjoyed it.